Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for live streaming 101 with Anthony Sanna. Glad you guys are here. My name is Karen Cornelson. I'm the Manager of Marketing and Communications for KAST, the Kootenay Association for Science and Technology, and I'm the Manager of the Nelson Innovation Center. Before we start, I just want to give you guys a really quick update on a couple of really exciting programs we got going on here at KAST. The first one is the Kootenay Pitch Competition, which is coming up on November 12th. It's basically the Kootenay's version of Dragon's Den. Four local entrepreneurs will pitch their business to a panel of judges made up of local investors and industry experts. It will be hosted live here at the Nelson Innovation Center, and the event itself will be virtual. So yeah, it should be a great time. You can definitely get your free ticket at kast.com/KPC. Another program we just launched is called Digital Economy, Rapid Response and Resiliency. I know it's a mouthful. We call it DER3 for short. And basically this no cost, no obligation program is for all Kootenay businesses in any sector if they need help entering or expanding in the digital economy. So if you know a business in your local Kootenay town that's struggling, let them know. kast.com/DER3 is the website. So check it out. And I'll put these links in the chat, and you can also email me at any time, karen@kast.com. So without further ado, I'm really excited to present to you our presenter, Anthony Sanna. Since 1990, Anthony has built a marketing career as a content producer and editor, creating content experiences for hundreds of clients. His experience includes 7 years as a community radio producer and host, 5 years as a podcast host and producer, video producer, website developer, copy editor, writer, live stream producer, and more. This guy is amazing. Basically, as he likes to say, he's an online marketing smarty pants. So yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you so much, Anthony, for being here. I'll throw it over to you.
Thanks, Karen. And welcome to the show today, folks. I'm used to broadcasting behind a microphone, not necessarily to a video camera, so I'm going to do my best today to show you what I've learned about live streaming. It's a bit complicated, it's a bit techy, and I'm going to try to water it down so that it's not so complicated at all. So let me just say that if you've got questions or ideas that come up that you want to share, you can do that in the Q&A section of the chat. Karen's going to be monitoring that for the class, for the webinar, and we'll get into that at the end of my presentation. And hopefully you'll have some specific questions to your own situation. I might be able to help you dial in with something like that based on all the sort of broad covered information that I'm sharing with you today. So let's dive in here. What we're going to cover today. I'm going to talk about the fundamental components of online video streaming, the basics of live streaming using something more than just your webcam or smartphone, and that's pretty important to understand because those solutions are pretty easy and available to everyone. I'm going to talk about them, sort of reference them, but we're going to talk about the more complicated versions of live streaming. I'll review the hardware and software needed to live stream, including some highly technical mumbo jumbo. That's a technical word right there. If you need help with that, just put it in the chat. We'll talk about that later. The 5 basic steps to live streaming. I'm going to go over what it takes in order to put something up online once I give you all the sort of ingredients. We're going to have a Q&A, and if you're into it, I'll even sign autographs at the end of the session today. Okay, let's dig in. Remember this? Remember what live performances were like? This is what life used to be like when we wanted to see a live performance. We'd actually go out and see something on stage. We'd actually stand close to each other without a mask. And then, well, this is kind of what's happened lately. Live performances and events have been put on hold thanks to COVID-19. Rather, live public performances and events have been put on hold. This past summer in Nelson, I helped the Nelson and District Arts Council transform their popular annual art walk events from this, and this is one of the events downtown, art hanging on the walls, people milling around, having a good time in one of the local businesses. It transformed from this into this. a virtual art walk. This was actually produced at the Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism Office, which is in the building where City Hall is, because they had a nice big fat pipe connecting to the internet. In 2020, live streaming has taken the place of live performances, events, and more. Today, you'll see TV broadcasts, video game streams, and social media video. They can all be live streamed. And again, this was Art Walk this past summer. This setup here, you can see Liesl performing, doing her best in front of a very small webcam on a tripod. I'm going to come back to this and talk more about how this whole setup worked. But I guess before we do all that, I wanted to explain to you what live streaming actually is. So I want to make a distinction first. Live streaming is different than streaming. Streaming is the method of data transmission when someone watches a video on the internet. And that's something you're probably familiar with. It's the way they deliver large video files like a Netflix movie. They basically chop it up into smaller chunks and deliver it from a remote storage location. By transmitting a few seconds of the file at a time over the internet, your computer or laptop, or maybe even your smartphone, they don't have to download the entire video before starting to play it. And now the difference with live streaming is that streamed video, it's streamed video that's sent over the internet in real time without first being recorded and stored. You see the difference there? It's either something that's on file, that's sent over in little bits, or it's sent live in real time. And the difference between regular and live streaming is just like the difference between, say, live theater actors reciting a memorized monologue versus live theater improv performance. So just like theater actors memorize their lines and deliver them, regular streaming, quote, knows the content beforehand, stores it, and then relays it to the audience a little bit at a time, or like actors do, one line at a time. And just like improv actors making something up on the spot, in live streaming, the audience receives the content in the same moment that it happens. The term live streaming usually refers to broadcast live streams where one connection goes out to multiple users at once. And to be clear, video conferencing like Skype or FaceTime aren't considered to be live streams. They work on RTC protocols rather than protocols used by one-to-many live stream broadcasts. RTC stands for real-time communication. Same sort of effect at the end where you actually receive it, different process to getting it to work. So let's talk about that. Let's see how live streaming works. I'll give you an example. Let's say Alice starts Facebook Live on her smartphone here in Nelson. And Bob, who lives on the other side of the country, tunes in to the live stream on his smartphone along with a few dozen of Alice's friends. Alice starts out her live stream by saying, "Hello, world." She points the camera to herself and says, "Hi, how you guys doing?" Once she does that, though, how does that information get transmitted to Bob on the other side of the country? Well, first, Alice's smartphone has to encode and compress that segment of video where she said hello. Then Facebook Live will send the encoded, compressed version of her saying "Hello, world" out to Facebook's content delivery network. And fortunately for Bob, one of the Facebook CDNs, one of their servers, is just a few miles away from his home, so his smartphone request for the first segment of the live stream is answered almost immediately. Other live stream viewers may experience more or less latency than Bob, depending on their geographic location. If they're not as close to that server that's actually dishing out the video, they may see it a few seconds later. Bob's phone decodes the video segment and reconstructs the compressed data. And finally, only a few seconds after Alice said hello in her room, her face appears on Bob's smartphone at the other side of the country, and Bob sees and hears her greeting. Simple, huh? Now, this live stream example is simple, but for the rest of the webinar, I'm going to go over the more complicated and perhaps professional ways of live streaming. So I asked the internet to provide me a couple of examples to show you the process or the ingredients involved in live streaming. And as you can see here on this illustration, the big thing to consider is right smack in the middle there where you see something called a hardware encoder. You've got your first couple of ingredients: microphone, camera. They go into mixers, they go into the hardware encoder, that spits it to a computer and out towards the internet. There's a hardware version of this with a hardware encoder. There's also one where you can take input from a camera and a microphone into something called a capture card. And then that goes into your laptop that has the software, and that goes out to the streaming service and then out to your audience. Okay, so just remember this sort of illustration. I'll come back to it, but essentially I'm going to break down the different components here. So let's talk about what you need to start live streaming. Obviously, you need video and audio. Video data for a live stream is called a video source, and audio data is called an audio source. Video sources come from cameras, computer screens, and other videos or images to be shown, like if you've got pre-recorded video content or other graphics that you want to show. And audio sources can come from microphones, mixer feeds, and again, pre-recorded content. Your video source for a live stream can come from a DSLR, a camcorder, a phone, computer screen, or a webcam. Audio sources can come from something like a lapel mic, a handheld mic, a USB microphone, or, like I said, from an audio file. Now, one thing you should know as well is that it's important to know that for your camera, for anything actually doing the video, it doesn't need to have storage, right? It doesn't, because you're not actually storing the data on the phone in the same way as you're recording it. It's actually being live streamed. It's just a pure stream right out. And getting back to audio, if you run your microphone signal through your camera, audio will come embedded in the video source, which means they'll arrive together through one cable. And that's a common way to capture audio, and there's pros and cons to doing it that way. I can get into that later with the Q&A if you want to talk more about how audio works. A simple live stream might consist of just one video and audio source. A more complex one might have 2 or more audio and video sources. And different combinations of video and audio sources are referred to as scenes or layouts. So if you have pre-recorded content, you've got the live content from your video camera, you've got your pre-recorded content, be it audio or video, and those can actually get sent out and along the way off to be live streamed. Be warned that the music in your live stream will be monitored by some online video, I don't know what the hell, what you want to call them, but Facebook has ears. If you live stream, your video content will be listened to and flagged and shut down for broadcasting copyrighted content. You can't just play any music. It has to be original or royalty free. And copyright violations can lead to your channel being banned from live streaming. When we did the Art Walk 2020, the first virtual live stream, we had musicians doing their original music, performing live, and then we had a DJ duo, Dose was their name, and they were doing a set where they were playing some, it was a really great set. They were playing some David Bowie and mixing it, but in the way that they played it, we were streaming out to Facebook Live. Facebook eventually, after they were broadcasting for about 20 minutes, just pulled the plug on the whole broadcast and shut it down, and flagged it because we were broadcasting copyrighted music, something that you just can't do. You can get away with broadcasting royalty-free music or original music, but nothing copyrighted. And that was the first live stream event that we did with Art Walk, and it was definitely a hard lesson learned. Okay, so you've got your cameras, your video camera, or your video source. How do you get your video source into along the way? In order to start streaming online, you need to capture the signal from your audio and video sources. Most of those ways of doing that are captured through HDMI or SDI connections from your, say, like your DSLR. HDMI is a pretty standard connection, something that you probably have on the back of your TV, maybe even into your computer. It sends uncompressed video and embedded audio signals to any device that can display or encode video. And HDMI runs 50 feet successfully. Anything more than that, you need an amplifier. SDI, on the other hand, is a professional video signal that's preferred in production environments because of its longer range. You can run it over 300 feet. and it's reliable because of those connectors on the end. It actually locks into your camera, and it locks into the encoder or the device at the other end, so it's not going to come unplugged. Somebody's not going to trip over it and pull the plug, which he raises his hand, has happened. USB cables are bad for that. Anyways, so different kinds of connectors. Now, unless you're using a webcam, simply connecting your DSLR or other video camera to a computer using HDMI or SDI cable won't work. You need a go-between device called a capture card. And a capture card connects the camera on one side to the computer, on one side, and to the computer via USB on the other, capturing exactly what the camera sees. It basically translates the raw video and audio data and makes it available at the other end. So that's a video capture card. There are also hardware encoders, and most hardware encoders come with the internal capture card, so you can connect video sources directly to them. There's a big price difference between a capture card and a hardware encoder. I don't know if you saw that. Capture cards you can buy online for as little as $17.92 in this example, and hardware encoders upwards of $1,300, $2,000, a different price point, much more sophisticated, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. I'll talk more about the streaming software and the hardware in just a little bit. If you're using a USB camera or a USB microphone, when you're trying to capture audio, you can just plug those simply into your computer. That's real easy. And the Logitech camera example that I have on the side here actually has a microphone built into it. That sometimes makes the audio easy to capture. Now that you've hooked up your video to your computer, your computer needs something to do something with that video signal before it can send it out to the internet. An encoder is the tool that does that, and I'll talk about that next. So, what are the different types of encoders? Essentially today you have the option of going live from 3 types of encoders, and as we all know, the easiest one is the one that's probably sitting on your desk or in your pocket, the one that Alice used in my example, a mobile phone with something like Facebook Live. The next type of encoder is a computer with streaming software installed, and this is the setup that we used for Art Walk this year. And the next type of encoder is a dedicated hardware encoder. And like I said, while the mobile phone may be convenient because it's in your pocket and an all-in-one solution, it'll be great for capturing video and doing the encoding, but the live production capabilities offered by mobile device are very limited. And for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to focus more on the encoding tools that are able to handle more professional live streams with the ability to add multiple cameras and layouts. Because hopefully what you're wanting to do is something of that sort, depending on what you're actually trying to present. So again, just to wrap up where we are right now, we've talked about the video sources, microphones, videos, audio going into a hardware encoder, and getting into the computer. You follow me? You with me so far? We're sort of going down the line before we actually get out to the internet. And same way here with the capture card, taking the video and the audio signal and putting that into the computer with the encoding software. This is the actual setup on screen right now that we used with Art Walk. And the camera that we used was a webcam, and it went straight into the computer, out to online, out into software, and then out to Facebook Live, and then out to the world. Okay, a video encoder, and why do you need one? Video encoder is the computer software or standalone hardware device that packages real-time video and sends it to the internet. The encoder translates the video signal for the internet by compressing and converting the incoming audio video signal into digital web-friendly format. You need an encoder because most video sources don't come ready for live streaming. For example, a video camera like a camcorders are made for recording large and bulky video files, and they're not necessarily designed for streaming in real time. That's kind of a synopsis of what I've been talking about so far, getting that signal in and translating it so that it can get out there. So let me talk about the different ways that it actually gets translated. One of them is with software encoders. A software encoder is an installed program that uses your computer's resources to neatly pack up the video and send it online. And as I previously mentioned, a video capture card is necessary to capture the video signal from your source to your computer. And there's a wide variety of free and paid streaming software available, including, like I have on the screen here, KAST, vMix, Streamlabs OBS, and OBS Studio is very popular. There's a ton more of them. You can easily look for them online. OBS Studio is a good way to start out learning about encoding because it's free to download and install, and all the settings are easily accessible, and there's a ton of online tutorials that can help you along. It's important to remember that streaming software always takes a toll on the CPUs that's actually running it. So in this example here, Avi Phillips was the fellow who was actually running the OBS software. He's the fellow in the mask in the picture here. So we've got the stream coming in that's capturing whatever Liesel's doing on camera from the webcam plugged into his computer. And his computer was, to say the least, loud. It was really churning away, taking both the audio and video signal and then putting that through encoding software and then punching that back out to the internet. Now, thankfully, we had a big connection, a big fat connection to the internet with the fiber optics connections they have in the office there. It was very fast, and yet his computer just wasn't big enough to handle doing all of that sort of stuff. On my computer, I was actually monitoring the sound and the video, and then Stephanie, the Art Walk coordinator, was actually on another computer still, who was taking care of all the online chat. Some people try to do all of those three processes on one computer, and that's not going to work very well. Your viewers will experience things like buffering or drop frames, and your computer will be laggy as heck. You won't be able to get anything done successfully. You need a relatively new machine, something with at least 8 gigs of RAM and a relatively fast processor. 2.8 gigahertz or better is the minimum I would suggest for you to actually be able to do some live streaming. Okay, back to encoders, hardware encoders, or otherwise known as streaming hardware. They're a dedicated device that handles all the encoding. Okay, so instead of doing that in the computer like I was just describing, these things take the signal in and chew it up and then spit it out. Audio and video sources are connected directly to the encoder. No capture cards required. Modern encoders are capable of taking in multiple input formats, including HDMI, SDI, VGA, DVI, and you can even plug in your audio sources with XLR connections or 3.5 millimeter analog audio. And in order to stream, hardware encoders, of course, need to be connected to the internet via Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or cellular. In this example here, the hardware encoders that I have on the screen, they're all different price points based on their functionality. Oops. The one in the upper right-hand corner is one that actually can transmit over a bonded cellular signal. I'm just reading the notes here. A bonded cellular signal for an internet connection. That's the Teradek VidU. Whereas the other ones are much more complex and powerful and able to take in so many different sources and record, mix, scale, and switch between them. It's kind of like having a TV studio, if you've ever seen that, where they have the director telling somebody to switch from this camera to this camera, this camera to this camera. Anyways, the ATEM Mini Pro is the one on the right. Epiphan's Pearl 2, ATEM is on the left. Epiphan is on the right. Definitely all-in-one production studios with incredibly vast functionality. So the difference between a hardware encoder and a software encoder, well, as the naming suggests, they're different. One streaming software runs on a computer, which in turn has a lot of other processes running on it. Therefore, the computer is not solely dedicated to encoding and streaming. Hardware encoders, on the other hand, are specifically designed for encoding, and that makes them more convenient and more reliable for streaming software because the other processes don't constipate the encoding process. And ultimately, this is why in mission-critical situations, professional live stream video producers rely on hardware encoders. They're not going to rely on an 8-year-old laptop to successfully ingest, digest, and spit out the signal out to the internet. Okay, I'm going to put on a little bit of a geeky hat here, and I'm going to talk about some, I guess, encoder settings. I'm going to try to make this fun and not too complicated, okay? So both software and hardware encoders have similar variable settings that affect your stream. Frame rate is one. That's something you might be familiar with. How many frames per second are displayed? On screen here, we show 24 frames per second versus 60 frames per second. 24 frames per second is what your iPhone or your smartphone will record at. 60 frames per second is something where you'll see if you watch the nightly news on TV, if anybody has one of those anymore. That kind of signal is a lot brighter and crisper. That's 60 frames per second. And I got this note I wanted to tell you just to give you something to compare. In the 1920s, cinematographers hand-cranked celluloid film through cameras recording at around 16 frames per second. And then the projectionists also had hand-cranked projectors in the theaters. And so they would crank at the same rate or at an even higher rate. And that meant projectionists could vary the frame rate to match the action taking place in the film as it was projected. And they could also run the films faster so they could get more showings in each day. So 16 frames per second, all the way up to 60 frames per second. Other encoder settings, resolution. These are things that you might be familiar with. The most common ones are 720p and 1080p. They refer to the number of pixels measured vertically. And P stands for progressive scanning and not for pixel, even though it's the number of pixels. Go figure. I didn't write that down, or make that up, rather. Bitrate is how much data, video data you're uploading per second. You all know examples of that because of your internet connection and that sort of thing. You'll have an experience of that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about streaming bandwidth in just a minute. But for live streaming, you want to have a minimum of 1,000 kilobits per second, and on the maximum end of things, 6,000 kilobits per second is going to give you a higher frame rate, which means it's going to give you better resolution, and that's going to give you a smooth, high-quality live stream. As well, codec is something of an encoder setting. It's the method of compressing audio and video data for faster transmission, and keeping a fine balance between bitrate, frame rate, and output resolution are what makes for a good stream. How high you can go depends largely on the type of encoder you use for your internet bandwidth. And for example, with sufficient bandwidth, a hardware encoder is able to stream 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second without skipping a beat, where an older computer with streaming software may really struggle, dropping frames and causing buffering, even with sufficient bandwidth. Okay, so we've got all that data there. Let's talk about how we actually get stuff online and the ways, what are the vehicles that actually get it out there. They're called a CDN, or a streaming destination. It's the online site or platform or app where your video becomes available to others. And we all know a few of the popular ones. I've got them on screen. Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope. There's more of them. There's paid streaming platforms as well. They offer much more control over where and how your live stream is presented, who sees it, and whether and how the stream is monetized. CDNs like Livestream Vimeo or KAST, Streamshark, and others offer different monthly plans. Costs depend on the amount of data in gigabits that you upload. Free or paid, you still need to sign up and log into a CDN in order to make the thing work. And for example, when you do that, even with YouTube, they require you to go through a few additional steps and wait for 24 hours before you can start live streaming. As soon as you figure out where you are with your live streaming and who your main audience is, you can begin choosing the right one. For example, we all know Facebook. It's good for connecting with your community, sharing immediate news, as well as growing your brand. YouTube, pretty much the same thing. Personal videos or lifestyles or shows. Twitch is mainly for gaming. Um, you can use special platforms. I found this one, streamingchurch.tv, intended for live streaming church services and include many peripheral services. And that's very popular in the United States. When I was doing research for this and I was looking at live streaming and getting information from videos, a lot of the example videos that I saw were from people who were streaming producers from different churches from all over the States. Very, very interesting. A standard feature on most CDNs is letting you decide between going live right now or scheduling to go live in the future. Just last night I set up a live streaming event for Kootenay Co-op Radio, so they can live stream the debate that's happening on Thursday night. If you're limited in your bandwidth, you can use restreaming services like restream.io to broadcast your live video simultaneously to a bunch of different places: YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, all at the same time. So something else that you can look into. Let's talk about bandwidth. And we're kind of wrapping up the more technical aspects here, so just bear with me for just a little bit more. When streaming out to the internet, you're consuming upload bandwidth. You know what that's like when you upload an email or you put something up in the cloud. If you're ever down at the Nelson Innovation Center, they've got a very fast pipe. Just saying. But bandwidth is a good thing down there. It's essential to know your network's upload speed, because this rate enables and also limits the quality of your outgoing streams. A stable internet connection is often the trickiest part of live streaming, and it's imperative that your stream doesn't freeze, buffer, or drop entirely. And of course, the most reliable connection is a hardwired connection, like I'm trying to illustrate with these pictures here. So the Ethernet cables, you can stream via Wi-Fi or cellular, but those signals tend to fluctuate. I've live streamed different events when I'm downtown, again for Kootenay Co-op Radio, walking down Baker Street, doing a live stream of the pipe bands as they went by, or the Pride Parade. It looks great on my phone, but when I look at the video stream afterward, I can see where it's starting to compress and the video quality starts to degrade, and that's because the bandwidth just wasn't there. And that's because there's dead zones for my phone on different parts of Baker Street as I was going up and down. So it'd be nice to be plugged in, but it just isn't going to happen that way when you're doing live streaming in that fashion. Bandwidth. Let's see. Bandwidth is important to check before you actually start doing your live streaming. It's important to always have approximately 1.5 times your stream's bitrate available to account for network fluctuations. And this is a really good way to figure that out. Your video bitrate, audio bitrate, multiply that by 1.5, and you get your required upload bandwidth. If your stream, if your live stream has a bitrate of 5 megabits per second, then ensure you have at least 7.5 megabytes of upload bandwidth available to ensure a reliable live stream. And that's enough math for one day. Okay, enough theory. You ready for your first live stream? Let's see if I can distill all this mumbo jumbo and make it all make sense. I'm going to talk about how to live stream in 5 basic steps. Essentially, live streaming comes down to connecting your sources to an encoder, setting up your scenes for switching, configuring a few encoder and streaming destination settings, and establishing a connection between the encoder and the streaming destination. Streaming destination and encoder user interfaces will differ from case to case, but the basic workflow remains the same. Here we go. You're going to connect your audio and video sources to the encoder, step 1. And also you're going to make sure that everything has power. Pro tip, whenever possible, make sure that you're using AC power instead of battery power for all your devices, especially your cameras. How many times have I been shooting something on my phone and battery dies and bzz, the whole thing's gone? That's what I'm talking about. Don't do that. Plug it in. No capture card is necessary with hardware encoders. You can see that there. The video sources are just going right into the hardware encoder. If you're using a video capture card, that needs to go into a computer with encoding software, or you can configure your computer to stream directly via software like OBS and your chosen CDN, like in this case, Facebook Live. You're going to configure your encoder. It's where you're actually going to put in information like resolution, frame rate, and bit rate. With software like OBS, you can configure these settings in-app on your computer, and the latest version of it has an auto configuration wizard that'll walk you through it. A hardware encoder, on the other hand, you need to access the hardware encoder via something like a web user interface or via an app. If you plan to do switching between a number of sources, this is where you actually set all those things up, all your different scenes, your different content. You want to configure your streaming destination settings next, and that's where you log into your Facebook or your CDN rather, and set up a new live streaming event. And that's where you can fill out all the details, stream, description, schedule, audience settings, and more. You can see the stream key there that I'm pointing out. Well, that then gets plugged into your software. And that's basically, it's a special password shared between the two. And it is kind of important. It's kind of like a password. You don't want to necessarily give that out. If somebody else has your stream key, if they steal that from you, they can stream live on your, say for in this example, your Facebook page. And the one thing that to note is if you're using OBS, the example that I've got here on the one side, once you punch that stream key in there, always look for the apply or save or OK or whatever it is. One of the issues we had when we were testing the art walk the first time was exactly that. We forgot to hit apply. We kept on pasting it in there. We didn't hit apply. OBS didn't know what we were talking about. And the two things couldn't handshake. It was just really silly once we figured that all out. Step 5. Click Start Streaming on the encoder and you're live. Once you press Start Streaming, in your preview on the left-hand side here, you see Start Streaming, and then all of a sudden you're streaming live on Facebook. This was the example I did when I put together the program with Fusion Health Radio, my podcast. It's that easy. If that all made sense, I hope it did. One big thing to note here is that if you've got, if I were to close whatever I'm doing here with the Fusion Health Radio live stream, and I didn't hit stop streaming on the other side, then I would still be streaming. OBS would still actually put something out to the internet, even if I don't got to shut it off. So you got to shut it off through the software interface, not necessarily from the live stream interface. Hope that makes sense. A couple of last minute pro tips. Live streaming requires a lot of prep work. Checking your gear beforehand, testing your connection speed, checking the sound are all part of the live stream process. Of course, you want to ensure that you've got a nice location and that you're wearing your favorite old 1970s vintage sweater. You want to make sure you look good on camera and that you've got decent lighting. Test your live stream on a dummy account. This is the example. The account was a dummy. With Facebook Live, you can actually do a test broadcast. I'm just thinking the account was a dummy just to make sure there's no confusion there about which dummy I'm pointing to on the screen. You can check how the picture looks, your sound, give you a chance to make tweaks. And lastly, get professional help when you really need it. And because this is complicated, I know a guy who can help you with that. Okay. And there you have it. That's kind of live streaming 101. And how's my time? It's right on time. This is the part of the webinar where if you've got questions, Karen, I think you can start feeding them to me. And if I do this, I should be able to see where all that's happening. And I'm just going to stop sharing. Great. In the Q&A, here we go. There's a question. Question comes in. In your experience, what are the typical delays or buffers that occur when streaming? Well, let me show you an example, okay? And in order to do that, I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to share my second desktop. And so On my desktop here, I have a video that we did from the art walk. When we first started streaming the first live art walk event, I didn't realize that there was a delay between. So this is actually not the art walk event I'm talking about, but I'll just use it for an example. Whatever Liesel's doing on camera here, it goes through to Avi's computer. It gets churned up and it gets spit out to the computer that I was looking at in, I think it was like a 10-second delay. Sometimes it can be up to like a 30-second delay. And what that actually looked like when we did the first live stream, was something like this. So we had the whole intro going, we started off the event, and Lucas Myers comes up on screen and...
Hello! Welcome to the live streaming Art Walk 32nd annual brouhaha from deep below a bunker.
Wait for it.
Gotham Bay.
This is the part where I actually went, hang on, I can't hear what he's saying. And I didn't realize because of the delay, and Lucas was just like, what do I do with this information? And Avi is screaming at me going, no, 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 it's okay, keep going, keep going.
So, my name is Lucas Myers, and welcome to the 32nd annual Art Walk. We are all excited to bring you this live streaming event. As you can tell, we're all kind of feeling our way. In fact, I'll be the first to admit that...
And on he goes, talking about the experience of what it was like to actually make a mistake and fumble right there live. So anyways, you want to talk about live streaming in terms of buffering and delays? This is a really good example. And it's a good example of testing your stuff before you actually get out to be live. Okay. Question here came in. Let me just stop the share on that. Couple more questions. Can you recommend any tips for recording and editing on a smartphone? Thinking of trying iShot. There's, depending on the phone that you're using, so let me brag here for just a quick minute. This video I'm going to share again. Start to share, and this video is the content that I actually shot for...
Hey everybody, welcome to the second virtual art walk for 2020. We are the Rob Funk Trio, playing some music for you, and we'd just like to say thanks to all the business sponsors and all the other artists that are taking part this year in this.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that that's actual iPhone video that I shot for all of the performers, and I used a gimbal with that little thing to keep the camera level, and I did some of the editing on my phone with iMovie, and I've also got another app on there called Splice that I like because you can sort of drag things around. Those are two that I could recommend. I'm not sure if they translate to the Android device, but if you're going to do smartphone video, that would be one way to do it. I'm going to stop that share and come back. And let's see, the question here, would any of these technical considerations also apply to hosting a live webinar in Zoom? I'd say yes. So this is a live webinar in Zoom, and we want to make sure that my connection to the internet is going to be fast enough so that I can actually show you video, so that you can actually hear me talking. You can actually get the slide deck in the same amount of time. It's maybe not as much of an issue because of the way that Zoom takes the video content and encodes it and spits it out. It can work on a pretty thin connection. Every week I do a Zoom call with my family on Wednesdays. We do it in the afternoon, and I take my phone and I go to someplace else in Nelson so that I can brag. And I just sort of have the phone there, and I do that all over the cellular signal. Sometimes it drops out, but most of the time it's pretty good. So all of the encoder settings and that sort of thing, It's a yes or no answer. Yes, it does. Yes, it matters in terms of technical considerations for hosting Zoom, and no, it doesn't. And I guess it would depend on your situation exactly how it is you're wanting to do things. There's, I guess, a bunch of different variables that we're talking about here in terms of the video sources and the audio sources coming in. I've seen Zoom performances where the audio quality was so bad that it kept on echoing back and forth because somebody didn't have something muted. And they didn't use a professional setup. They didn't have, they didn't have a good microphone to capture the audio. They just had their little crappy earbud audio. So their music, as much as it sounded okay, it could have sounded better. So yeah, there's lots of different considerations when you're looking at doing something, even with Zoom, with considering a live stream. Hope that answers your question. Let's see, another question here. If you set up two cameras, do you have to put settings to change? For example, with different views from a DJ. Okay, so camera 1, camera 2, they feed into the capture card, which goes into the software encoder, and OBS software is the thing that actually takes those different video sources and allows you to switch from one signal to the next, one signal to the next. A hardware encoder would allow you to do that in the same way that I guess like a TV studio would. You'd click on button 1 for camera 1 and button 2 for camera 2, and the result at the other end, you'd see image from camera 1, press the button for camera 2, then you'd see image for camera 2. Can I show you just a real quick example of what that looks like? Let's go back to the desktop here and share. When we did Art Walk, I'm just going to turn this down. So this is the intro video. This was a separate video that came in technically from one camera. The countdown goes into the introduction was another camera. It was actually a pre-recorded video source, but this was all switched with the OBS software. So we went from these sources to another pre-recorded bit. OBS allowed us to put the artwork on top as well. The little thing down the side that says Donna Wright. All the graphics. And then this was another video source. And then we had, of course, Lucas as another video source. So again, that's all done through the switching software. Hope that helps you make sense of getting the different video signals and how they all work. Okay, talk about the cost price ranges associated with platforms like Eventbrite, etc., which are ideal professional, but also for small independent businesses, for live streaming events. Thanks. I'm not sure that I have enough information to give you a qualified answer about the different cost prices of things like Eventbrite. I know that for a bunch of the different groups that I've worked with here in Nelson, we've used the free version of Eventbrite, and that's been fine. But I haven't had any experience with actually having to pay for the alternate services that they offer. So the internet might be a better source of that, or perhaps Facebook. There might be a few forums there that can answer that question. Next one here. Would a smartphone's audio be adequate for live streaming a guitar and one singer? It could be. If you had a, so again, your smartphone's going to connect to the internet via Wi-Fi. So your Wi-Fi connection needs to be pretty solid. So if I was going to do that, I would want to make sure that I'm close to my router, that I'm not in a dead spot, that nobody else in the house is actually using the internet at the same time. You also want to make sure that your phone doesn't get bothered by things like incoming text messages or other notifications. A lot of different distractions can come up on this sort of thing, but yes, you can use this as a camera and audio to feed out for a live stream. Maybe not the best way to do it in a more professional sense, but if you're just performing for your friends, sure, why not? Give it a shot. Oops. Next question. Can you set up an automatic recording of your live stream? You can. Recording your live stream. So in the example that I gave you with ArtWalk, we had the video coming in, and I'm trying to be sort of redundant about this so you sort of get the whole thing. Forgive me if it's something that already makes sense to you, but I'm trying to make it clear. Video came in through the webcam, went into the laptop. Laptop had software there, and that software, OBS, had to do a lot of things in order to switch back and forth between the graphics and then the live video, and then the pre-recorded video, and then the other graphic videos. We couldn't necessarily record on that computer successfully at the same time, although OBS says that you can record there. It would have just totally constipated that computer, would have totally bogged it down, and would have really affected the stream quality. Where we got that recording was from Facebook Live once it actually went out. And the quality of that video recording from Facebook Live, if you've uploaded stuff on Facebook before, Facebook compresses it, does a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, Lucas doesn't usually look that fuzzy and blurry in real life, even if he is being told to stop, hold the horses by a guy like me. The video quality there was really, really compressed, and so it wasn't the best quality. Are there ways to record otherwise? Yes, there are. Hardware encoders via software on your laptop. It's possible to get your live stream either as it's happening going out, or catching it at the other end from something like Facebook. Hope that makes sense. And isn't necessarily automatic. It's not something that happens automatic. You'd actually have to literally do that. I'm just looking at the time there. It's 10:02. I've been going on here for quite a bit of time. If anyone's got any sort of last minute questions. Oh, another one here. How do you monetize your events? Oh, well, that's a different hat that I should answer that question with. Monetizing your events, you can do that in a number of ways. I know that Facebook Live is now allowing you to actually host events where you can get people to pay for tickets. You can do something where people are paying. I bought a ticket last night for the Kootenay pitch competition. I didn't actually pay for it. It was a free ticket, but I did that through Eventbrite. KAST is going to send me that link only after I buy the ticket. So whether or not I paid for it, whether it was free or whether or not I paid for it, they still control giving me the link. So that would be one way to do it. Sponsorships would be one way to monetize your things. So many different things to talk about in terms of monetizing events. I guess it depends on what the event is, and that's probably a bigger answer than I can actually address right here in the next few minutes. So perhaps you can follow up with me, or again reach out to other folks about how monetizations happen. I'm just going to check one more thing here to make sure that yeah, I think we're good. Any last questions? I'm going to wrap things up, and I'm going to how am I going to wrap things up? I'm going to wrap things up with this and this, and maybe a little bit of this. There we go. Hopefully that's up on your screen in the way that it should be. I just wanted to say that's it. That's all, folks. I want to say a huge thanks to Karen and everyone at KAST for putting this webinar on. I know they're planning to do a few more sort of lunch and learn kind of sessions, and I think I was the guinea pig with regards to live streaming anyways. Let me know how this thing went, and certainly get in touch with Karen and let her know. Feedback is great. It's critical to actually doing anything in terms of performing. If there's one last tip I'm going to tell you, if you're doing live streaming, you have to be open to feedback. Good, bad, or ugly, it's only going to help you get better. And you have to have some pretty thick skin in order to listen to yourself, make mistakes, and then do better the next time. That's all I've got for today. I want to thank you for that. My email up on the screen, anthony@anthonysanna.com. You can call or text me, my number there. Feel free to bug me with any questions you've got or ideas. And if you're interested in doing more with live streaming or anything to do with online marketing, I'm always happy to answer questions. And if you want me to do a presentation like this, you just have to ask. That's all that Karen did. Again, KAST, Karen at KAST.com, Anthony Sanna at AnthonySanna.com. Thanks for watching, and I think we'll see you next time. Okay.